Do you remember the first time you had to take part in a fire drill or an earthquake drill? It may have been fun. Like, I remember leaping under the desk and curling up as small as possible in elementary school. I remember being excited to miss a portion of whatever class we were in while making our way outside in a straight line for a fire drill. These drills may have also been a bit nerve-wracking. What if the thing happens that we're all practicing for? So I teach at Maryvale, and like most schools, we often practice active shooter drills, which definitely feels a bit scarier. In those situations, we plan for how we will react when things are okay, so that if something becomes not okay, or if an unsafe situation takes place, we already know what to do instead of panicking. And the alarms are loud. Often we're holding our ears as we're making our way out to the common space during a fire drill. Alarms let us know that something is not right, and they prompt us to discover what's going on and to act accordingly. Did you know that our bodies do this too? Our bodies react in different ways to clue us in as to how we're feeling and help us figure out what to do next. So we're wrapping up this series, The Enemies of Joy, talking about all kinds of emotions and feelings that we experience and how that can steal the joy God intends for us to live in. Even though joy is more than a feeling, in those times when we are feeling excited or visibly joyful about something, our body language matches that feeling. So I'm a very excitable person. So for me, this usually means jumping up and down or hugging someone or enthusiastic verbal responses. What our bodies do often tell us a lot about what's going on inside. So today I'm talking about anxiety and the way that anxiety can attempt to steal the joy from our day-to-day life. First, let me be clear that everyone has or will experience some kind of anxiety in their life. Just like all emotions and feelings, there are varying degrees of this, and sometimes we need help outside of ourselves, and that's okay. Anxiety can come in the form of disorders and reaction to trauma and some larger things going on in your life. Sometimes it can feel like anxiety can be taking over your life and making it difficult to function. I've been there. And if that's you, I want to encourage you to talk to a trusted adult, your small group leader, a parent, a coach, or an older sibling, so that they can support you and help you to find the help that you need. Sometimes what we're going through can really benefit through talking to a counselor or in some cases medication. So in this message, I'm talking about the day-to-day anxiety that creeps up unexpectedly. Sometimes it's triggered by something and we can come to expect it. So I used to really struggle with traveling, especially long car trips. It took me a lot of time to realize I didn't like the loss of control or the feeling of being trapped in a moving vehicle before I was able to develop some really good strategies to help me in those situations. Do I still feel anxious before a trip? Definitely. But knowing the why and feeling confident in my strategies help the situation and give me a lot of peace. With anxiety, when we're feeling nervous about something, it's usually because we're unclear about the unknown. Anxiety can feel like a ton of different things. Sometimes it can feel like thoughts swirling around your head like a tornado, and sometimes it can manifest physically in your body. Sweaty palms, stomach aches, dizziness, inability to talk or communicate, heavy breathing. It can feel debilitating and hopeless sometimes, like it will never go away. I remember a counselor I was seeing once told me that those symptoms are like a house alarm going off, letting us know that something wasn't right. It wasn't a betrayal of our body like I always felt, but rather our body alerting us to dig deeper and figure out what's actually going on. In moments like that, our response, or let's face it, my response, was always, I need to get rid of this feeling as quick as possible, or how can I separate myself from this anxiety and just live a normal life? I felt like I would do anything just to make it go away. But then God dropped one of the biggest truth bombs of my life. Someone asked me this: what if God wants to use our anxiety, something that isn't from Him, to actually draw us closer to Him and further us on the road of being the best, most holy versions of ourselves? In our quest for peace, maybe the goal is not to get rid of anxiety altogether, but to have a better relationship with it so that we can figure out what is actually going on in our hearts. Maybe true peace comes from the curiosity of wanting to uncover where that feeling is coming from. Instead of treating anxiety like an enemy, maybe it can be a stepping stone on our journey to peace and joy. When we know the why of what is happening, we tend to feel better about it. For example, algebra and geometry were always super stressful classes for me. But when my teacher actually explained to me in a clear way why there's a specific method in solving the equation, I felt more confident, more peaceful about being able to complete my homework. So how do we do that? How do we get to the root of what's going on? Well, we need some people in our life that are for us, people who we can talk to open up to, and who can help us explore what's going on in a patient way. Your small group is perfect for this. People doing life with you, who are living similar experiences, and a leader who has wisdom from their own life journey so far. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable and ask for help to understand what's going on. In school, I was always that annoying girl in class who raised her hand far too often just to say, "I really don't understand. Can you please help me?" But I know that I needed that, and it was better to be vulnerable and honest than to pretend I knew exactly what was going on. Secondly, and this is the most important one, Jesus is the source of our joy and peace. He desires that for you too. Jesus is never trying to keep anything from you, but he loves to be able to walk with you through the ups and downs of our emotions. A powerful image I always held on to since high school is this idea of locking eyes with Jesus. It's kind of like that staring game where you see who can make each other laugh first or who blinks first. Except in this case, Jesus wants us to lock eyes with him to grow in trust. And when I do this successfully, I can feel the anxiety lifting a bit so that I can see Jesus working and moving clearly in my life. One of Jesus' best friends had an experience like this too. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 14, Jesus tells his disciples to get into a boat and head out while he was having some quiet alone time, which, as a side note, is a perfectly good strategy when we're feeling overwhelmed or anxious. Later, Jesus was going to go meet the disciples in the boat, but the boat was a long way off from the land. The weather was also a little crazy too, but nothing is too big for Jesus, so he goes ahead and walks on the water towards the boat. The disciples see him, freak out, and think he's a ghost because it's a shadowy figure walking on water towards them. But verse 27 tells us what Jesus said. Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." Okay, fair enough. But Peter is not convinced by that statement alone. Verse 28 to 32 tells us this. "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me!" And immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Peter asked Jesus to help him, and when he locked eyes with Jesus, he had confidence, peace, that he could do the impossible. But then he had doubts, and he let his anxiety get the best of him, and he began to sink and panic. The circumstances didn't change between Peter feeling peaceful and anxious. The wind was blowing after as it was before, but what changed is Peter took his eyes off of Jesus. He thought he could handle things himself. Sounds familiar, right? Sometimes it can feel like we take one step forward and then 2 steps back in our relationship with God. But like anything worth doing, it takes time. Learning to lock eyes with Jesus and taking a breath long enough to stop running from our anxiety can be really hard. When we do, though, the peace that God offers is so real and tangible. God wants that for you. But we can be like Peter. To help you get started, try this common prayer that's really easy to remember. Breathe in and say to yourself, "Jesus, I trust in you." Then breathe out and say it again. "Jesus, I trust in you." That's it. Really simple, but can have a profound effect on your heart in that moment. And remember, God doesn't waste the waiting part, the discovering part, the "I'm working on it" part. God is patient, forgiving, and incredibly loving. He delights in you even when you feel overwhelmed by life.
We've all asked ourselves questions that start with what if. What if I fail this test? What if I get lost? What if I'm not good enough? And what if God doesn't love me? Here's the issue. The more often you say what if and follow it with words that describe a negative scenario, the more often you focus your attention on a potential negative future. Why would you want a negative future for yourself? Think about this for a second. Where your focus goes is where your energy flows. When you're thinking about these negative scenarios, it's very possible that you're also creating feelings of stress and anxiety. These feelings make me and you very similar. Science shows that high schoolers have the most stress and anxiety in these 4 years of their life than they will in any other time. I think it's really cool and unique that I get the opportunity to talk to high school students about this because I can relate. Right now, I'm currently in my senior year at Cabot Hall and have so much work and projects going on that all I want to do is just push them to the side and enjoy the time that I still have in my high school years. Over the last year or so has probably been one, if not the most stressful and anxious times of my life. At the end of my junior year, all the talk about colleges and what would be next for us in the future started to happen. It all hit me so fast. I thought to myself that this was it. This was the moment that I couldn't wait for freshman and sophomore year, but it soon turned into the moment that came too fast. I haven't really put that much effort into what will be next for me. Any thought of my future and what is to come brings me so much stress and anxiety. I start to freak out about what people will think of me. I'm worried that people will look at me differently if I choose not to go to college or if I find a plan that works for me, but that other people may not totally understand. Thinking about the location of where I will end up also stresses me out. I question every day whether I want to stay close to home or go maybe a little further away to continue my journey. If I stay close to home, my family will be accessible. And of course, even if I go further away, my family will still be there for me, but it may not be as easy to get back to home as it would be if I was close. And finally, I still haven't figured out what I want to do with my life. I'm worried that there is nothing out there that I will be good at or successful with. So I've been stressing out about what I would study if I decided to go to school, or what I would get involved in if I decide to stay home. Oftentimes when I get anxious or stressed, I tend to get a little verbally aggressive towards people that want to help. I struggle to communicate how I'm feeling, which causes the stress and anxiety from these topics to snowball and become worse. This happens sometimes with my parents, the people who have been there with me since day one and who have supported me the most. I know that all they want to do is just be there for me and support me through this tough time, but because of the stress and anxiety, I tend to raise my voice and then just drop the conversation. I know that to best figure out and overcome my feelings, I need to learn how to become a better communicator when it comes to talking about them. So I need to not get upset and raise my voice, and I just need to remember that the people who I talk to just want to help. It is written in the Bible in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7, "Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you." While this is talking about God, who we know cares about us and is someone we can always cast our worries on, it's a great reminder that we can cast our worries onto all the people that are important to us, because just as we care for them, they care for us. No matter what we're going through, the people in your life, like family and good friends, are always there for you and can always help you out. While not everyone in this room is struggling with the decision of college right now, we all have things in our lives that cause us stress and anxiety. Maybe it's a relationship in your life, or a certain class at school. Maybe it's what you think of yourself right now, or your fear of what others think of you. Maybe it's just that you have so much on your plate right now that you can't get the thoughts in your head to stay quiet for 5 seconds. I'm sure no matter who you are, you have something right now bringing you those feelings of stress and anxiety. To overcome my feelings of stress and anxiety, I found it helpful to take time for myself and to really reflect on who I am, who I want to be, and how I want to get there. This is a very difficult thing to do, and it's much easier said than done. But the time I spend with myself helps me to clear my head and get a better sense of direction for where I'm going in life and a better understanding of what God has planned for me. Every encounter with stress and anxiety in our life is designed to teach us. Sometimes we're fortunate enough to figure out the lessons to be learned, while other times we simply need to have faith that if the lesson wasn't meant directly for us to learn from, how we handled it was observed by someone who might needed to hear it.
Comparison, loneliness, fear, anxiety, all enemies of joy that will ultimately be lost because Christ conquered them. He freed us to have joy because we know the end of the story. We read the last page. Jesus saves. God wins. We are on the winning team. The prophet Ezra in the book of Nehemiah tells us, "The joy of the Lord is our strength." Our joy is not based on our emotions, feelings, or circumstances, but in a God who loves us, knows us, and is always coaching us to be the best versions of ourselves. He is a champion of you, your #1 fan, and he is with you each and every day.